Kathy Park is with me now. And Kathy, earlier this month, the Biden administration declared Reiner as being wrongfully detained, which sounds like semantics, but it's not, right? It gives a different level of the effort to try to get her out. Her wife wants the government to do more than they have been for now, right?
I just wanted to, greetings and good vibes, everybody. I just wanted to touch base on this real quick because this just came out, and y'all know we go hard on this Brittany Griner case. So I just wanted to, breaking news real quick.
Hallie, that's absolutely right. I think it's important to note that Brittany Griner has been in Russian custody since February 17. So this was right before Russia invaded Ukraine. So the timing of this is pretty extraordinary, and there have been growing fears that she is being held as a political pawn. As you heard there, Sherelle Griner for Brittany Griner broke her silence and told ABC News that she has been in talks with Antony Blinken, the State Department, and he told her that Brittany Griner is a top priority. But Sherelle saying, look, if she is a top priority for the U.S., show me the proof, bring her back here to the U.S. And Sherelle's growing fear is that the longer that she is being detained, she worries just kind of about her well-being. What will she be like if and when she is returned to the U.S.?
It was also interesting that you talked about how Brittany wanted to stop going overseas to play, but stars like her can make a ton more money in Russia than their WNBA salaries, right?
Yeah, so we also learned in that interview through Sherelle Griner that Russia treated Brittany pretty well for her talents, and she was well compensated every time she went over there to play overseas. But it was supplemental income in addition to her WNBA salary. Take a listen.
She has only had one Thanksgiving in the States in 9 years since she's been pro, and she misses all that stuff just because, she can't make enough money in the WNBA to sustain her life.
And Hallie, according to the New York Times, Brittany Griner reportedly earned more than $1 million every time she played in Russia. And here in the U.S., there is a salary cap for WNBA athletes, and that number is $230,000. Wow. So it wasn't uncommon for superstar athletes like Brittany Griner to go overseas to play. However, this was a lucrative pipeline for Brittany, but obviously it's been under a lot of scrutiny because of the fact that she is being detained right now, and of course because of the war in Ukraine. Hallie?
Kathy Park, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us, and that does it for this hour. We're going to have more for you here tomorrow.
Just wanted to tell y'all about that real quick. Now, obviously, we are here because
ending the pattern of violence among young men.
We're going to talk about George Floyd today.
Playing both football and basketball, and continued his sports career into college at South Florida State College and Texas A&M University. George touched the lives of the people who knew him well and those who only knew him in passing. Patrons at his restaurant job said that he was a gentle giant who loved his hugs from his regulars, and a former teammate of George said that the team used to call him Big Friendly. George Floyd's murder by police sparked international outrage and the largest racial justice protest in the United States since the Civil Rights Movement. Black Lives Matter protests also happened in other countries around the world in the summer of 2020. Activists have called for changes from banning police chokeholds to an entire overhaul of the policing system. Many states have made adjustments to their policing regulations following these events and protests. We send love to all those affected by George Floyd's tragic passing.
Heaven help the child who never had a home. Heaven help the girl as she walks the streets alone. Heaven help the roses if the bomb begins to fall. Heaven help us all. Heaven help the black man if he struggles one more day. Heaven help the white man if he turns his back away. Heaven help the man who kicks the man who has to crawl. Heaven help us all. Heaven help us all. Heaven help us all. God. Heaven help the people with their backs against the wall. Heaven help us all. Oh, yeah.
So obviously today we are going to be sharing and talking about George Floyd.
Everybody believed that Black Lives mattered afterwards. And then we try and look at what it would take to shift power so the most vulnerable could have more of a say in determining their own outcomes. And people get tired, and those memories fade, and their attention goes someplace else. And then we rinse and we repeat. We'll need to empower communities to do radically different things. And I say this in the United States, but there's almost no country on earth that doesn't have some of the same complaints from folks who look different than the majority, who experience their lives differently, who are marginalized because of their race, their religion, their gender, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, right? Their class. So policing and the racism that we've seen in American policing, it's not just a US issue. We exist in a global context of racism. Why send an armed response when the problem is homelessness? Send a roof and four walls. Why send an armed response when the problem is substance abuse? Send a counselor. Why send an armed response when the problem is suicide or mental health? Send someone who knows how to engage in therapy around that. In many parts of the world, we use law enforcement as the service of last resort for anyone who's struggling with any problem we've failed to support.
Right.
And if you give people the resources that they need to take care of themselves, communities the resources they need to take care of themselves, you will massively shrink the need for an architecture of punishment. So we need to have architectures of care.
Yes. Yep.
So what I want to hear, that folks are making data collection on their impact in vulnerable communities, not just their hiring, not just their mentoring or their executive training, but actual impact, data collection and comprehensive research on that, a priority. It's not just about training, it's not just about education, it's about giving money to the communities so that they have the resources to determine how they want to keep themselves safe.
Reparations.
Within my organization, we like to say that optimism in the face of reality is a revolutionary act, and we encourage people to be a little bit revolutionary every day. When I talk to activists who are newly activated to this work and who are dreaming of worlds differently than those of us who grew up with the constraints that I grew up with could have possibly imagined, that gives me hope. And when I see people who are the generation of my parents who are still working, they're still fighting, and they understand that they've seen gains and they've seen losses, but that their contributions aren't over yet. Those things obligate me to optimism. I don't have the luxury to feel otherwise.
Collective bargaining to shield their members from accountability for the killings of unarmed Black people and other heinous misconduct. No progress can be made without reining in the unchecked power of police unions. Police unionizing can have deadly consequences. One study found that extending collective bargaining rights to Florida sheriff's offices led to an estimated 40% increase in violent police misconduct. Another study found that the protections built into the police union contracts in America's 100 largest cities were significantly correlated with the killing of unarmed civilians. Another study suggests that the increase in police unionization from the 1950s through the 1980s resulted in about 60 to 70 additional civilians killed by the police each year. the majority of whom were people of color. Experts believe the protections in police union contracts give too many officers the sense they can abuse their power. Police contracts often have provisions allowing departments to erase disciplinary records within a few years, enabling officers with histories of misconduct to clear their records. Others allow accused officers to access their investigative files before being questioned, letting them manipulate their story. Others set strict time limits for citizens to file complaints about officers. Some prevent anonymous complaints from being investigated at all. All these provisions allow officers with histories of misconduct to stay on the force. Derek Chauvin, for instance, had at least 17 lodged against him and never faced any discipline beyond 2 letters of reprimand. Needless to say, other public sector employees are not afforded these extraordinary protections. Even if an officer is fired, there's an extensive appeals process that usually works out in their favor. In Philadelphia, 62% of officers fired from 2006 to 2017 were reinstated. In San Antonio, 70% were. When New York police officer Daniel Pantaleo was finally fired 5 years after choking Eric Garner to death, the New York Police Department's largest union responded by threatening a work slowdown. Police unions fight cities that enact even mild reforms, like establishing civilian review boards. The result? Review boards are notoriously ineffective by design. Some police union contracts with cities forbid them even creating a review board. In the tragic case of Breonna Taylor, Louisville's review board could not start an investigation, take complaints from citizens, or recommend discipline for the officer. All it could do was make recommendations for policy or training changes. It's the same in other cities. Oversight boards have no investigative power, no subpoena power, and no discipline power. Police unions also wield enormous political clout. A Guardian investigation found police unions spent about $87 million influencing state and local legislation over the past 2 decades, and at least $47.3 million on campaign contributions and lobbying at the federal level. In 2017, police unions spent $2 million to influence legislation in California alone. Now, don't get me wrong. Stopping the abuses of police unions must not become a stalking horse for attacking public sector unions generally. But the unchecked powers of police unions urgently need to be addressed.
Yes.
To start, lawmakers must change state labor laws to restrict the subjects police unions can bargain over. They should limit negotiations to pay and benefits, not how police do their jobs, how and when they use force, and how and when they are disciplined. For decades, police unions have shielded officers from accountability, bullied cities into doing their bidding, and attacked lawmakers who took them on. To ensure they can no longer block accountability under the guise of collective bargaining.
Police officer Derek Chauvin was found guilty on multiple counts, including second-degree murder in the death of George Floyd. Now, you're probably wondering, why has it been so difficult to convict other police officers even when evidence like video footage exists? If you've asked yourself this question before, you're not the only one. Texas resident David Cawley was completely shocked after a judge dismissed his lawsuit against the officer who shot him, ultimately leaving him paralyzed.
I feel cheated, man. I feel like I've been lied to. Like everything, the faith of my government and everything, it all come back to a lie.
While government agencies don't collect or report this data on a national level, criminology professor Philip Stinson of Bowling Green State University built a database of nearly 12,000 criminal arrest cases involving almost 10,000 police officers from the years 2005 to 2015. Last year, Stinson told news website 538 that only 110 law enforcement officers had been charged with either murder or manslaughter in an on-duty shooting. only 27 of those officers were ultimately convicted.
Mm.
For context, the Washington Post estimates that just over 1,000 people were shot and killed by police in 2020 alone. Now, public outrage against police violence has only grown since 2015, but this outcry has not necessarily led to more police officers facing charges. So, why is this the case? Well, there are several reasons. According to Human Rights Watch, prosecutors might not want to pursue cases against officers because they have to work closely with police departments on other criminal cases. And when these cases do go to trial, some legal experts say juror bias leads to many police trials ending in acquittal or hung juries. For example, if a police officer who shot someone on camera says they feared for their life, experts say juries will tend to believe that testimony without evidence disproving it. Keep in mind, when police officers face civil suits for their conduct, city governments sometimes choose to settle with victims and their families.
Mhm.
These settlement payouts cost some cities millions of dollars each year,
Yep.
but they rarely put financial stress on police departments themselves.
Yep.
In fact, even officers who are frequently sued have been able to stay on the force and avoid internal discipline. But the biggest reason that it's so difficult to convict police officers of wrongdoing could be something called qualified immunity. It's a legal doctrine that protects officers from being sued if their actions do not violate, quote, clearly established law. Remember David Colley? To dismiss his case, a judge ruled that the officer who shot him was entitled to qualified immunity.
Yeah, the dude that shot me, you're not a hero, man. You're not a hero. And they covered for you. They covered your tracks. They covered up for you. In the courtroom, they snuck in the qualified immunity, still covering for you.
Qualified immunity has also shielded police officers who've done things like assault and arrest a man for standing in front of his house, seize a man's tablet after he recorded police beating a suspect, and even shoot a 10-year-old while trying to shoot a pet dog. This is simply because these actions had previously been deemed unconstitutional in another case and not made a part of clearly established law. People can bring civil suits against police officers for violating their Fourth Amendment rights. That is, the right to be secure against things like unreasonable searches and seizures. The Fourth Amendment is the basis for laws requiring warrants and protections against arbitrary arrests. But due to a 2009 Supreme Court ruling in the case of Pearson versus Callahan, judges who are considering cases against police officers do not have to answer whether or not the officer had violated the Fourth Amendment. Instead, they can decide whether or not an officer violated a clearly established law. A team of Reuters reporters found that this decision increased the rate at which qualified immunity has been granted. From 2005 to 2007, appeals courts favored police officers in 44% of excessive force cases in which a qualified immunity defense was raised. A decade later, from 2017 to 2019, that rate had increased to 57%. When a judge declines to establish whether or not an officer used excessive force in violation of the Fourth Amendment, they avoid setting a precedent for future cases, even when that case includes egregious acts of police misconduct. The absence of precedents, in turn, makes it difficult to convict officers in the future, creating a vicious cycle. So, absent the Supreme Court reversing the rulings on qualified immunity, what can be done to reform the system? Well, New York City just passed a bill that could serve as a model for the rest of the country. The bill establishes a new civil right at the local level protecting New Yorkers against unreasonable search and the use of excessive force, essentially making it possible for people to sue police departments under explicit local law, rather than state or federal law. Illinois and Texas are currently looking at similar bills. But police reform advocates say New York's bill does not do enough to solve the problem of systemic police violence. And some experts assert that for reforms to be truly lasting, they should focus not only on prosecuting individual officers, but also on changing the procedures that lead to excessive force in the first place.
So if you're just tuning in, today marks 2 years since George Floyd's murder. And before we get into, discussions about it, however, you can comment in the comments your thoughts concerning where we've come. since then, and what has transpired since then, or your feelings and thoughts of how you feel about this whole situation has changed over the course of these past 2 years.
Of our lack of engagement with justice concerns. My name is Shamara J.J. Fletcher, and I am the Principal Officer for Pentecostal, Charismatic and Multicultural Relations at Churches Together in England. Join us as we say the National Candle of Justice prayer. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come before you today repenting of our lack of engagement with justice concerns.
No, we shall not.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey guys, I called you both to see how you were feeling about the George Floyd video.
To be honest, I only watched like 45 seconds of the video of George Floyd. I've seen far too many videos of black people just being killed, murdered, slain by police officers. So I did not want to watch the video, and I was watching CNN, and it popped up on my screen, and I literally saw like the 15 seconds they had shown when the officer had his like whole knee on his neck, and he was screaming out like "Mama, Mama," and the officer was like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay, buddy."
And in the end, it wasn't okay. George Floyd spent his last moments calling out for his mama. And Dontrese, you're a mom to a black son. So how are you feeling about all of this?
Well, it's kind of added some anxiety that I probably didn't have before. I guess it's always been an issue in the black community, but just because it's more prevalent and because during these last few months, it's been like a lot of hate being shown, it just added to my anxiety as far as raising in the community, like in the U.S., and just knowing that he's an innocent little boy now, but somebody can see him. Even in just like a few years, somebody can see him as a threat just because he's black.
I can imagine it's hard. Does he know what's going on? Like, do you talk to him about racism and police brutality?
I don't talk to him about what happened like directly, but like we try to watch like movies about like the history of black people and African Americans and stuff. And so he doesn't really like watching it because it's like, it's sad and he doesn't want to see that, and he doesn't really experience it in his everyday life. So no, but if he does see it or we do talk about it, like he gets emotional and doesn't want to talk about it.
As soon as we hear about another shooting or another murder or something else happen, I just don't want to hear about it, because it's like, again, we're going to have to protest again. It's almost like you want to normalize it, but you can't. So it's like I want to turn the TV off and get away from social media, but if I do, then I'm normalizing it. So I can't really turn off the news and turn off social media, because it's the way that we find out. That's the way that we get our voices heard.
Right.
And we're out protesting and we're out fighting against police brutality, but at the same time, I feel like police officers are still seeing us as a threat. They're still afraid of our skin color, and I'm wondering what it's going to take for all that to change.
It makes me want to reach out to the police and help them do better in our communities by helping them learn the people in the community and what's going on in the community, but I shouldn't have to do that because they're police. And it also turns me off from the police, because we're supposed to want to dial 911, but when we dial 911, you shoot us. It's already tough being black, just being black. It's hard to walk out the door knowing that you're going to come back home being black. Not knowing now that if you can sleep in your own home, because you might get shot. Like, it's just so much. So it's just hard to even believe as a Black person. So it boggles my mind, and it's an added layer of stress mentally being Black every day. It's a challenge. It's like, you know how parents have to get up every day to make sure that they do everything that they can to provide for their family. And it's like, it shouldn't be a chore being a Black person every day to make sure that you make it back home.
Yeah, it's rough for us out here, and I feel like it's important for us to take care of our. And there's a stigma around mental health in the Black community. You know, we don't like to talk about it, but it's vital, especially now when dealing with racism and police brutality. We need to practice self-care, including our youth. Dontrese, what have you and Zakai been doing?
I think I should probably call it that a little bit more, but because he's 8, he just like plays with his friends or watch TV, like he does his own thing.
Yeah.
But when he gets like, I guess has more things going on, my main voice, what that is, or just by my own showing, like how because I take self-care, I take a moment to myself, or I get up and I work out or something like that. So just to verbalize that you have to take care of yourself, and that's what I'm doing when I do that. I think that's a way to show them and teach them about that.
How about you, Martise?
I pray. I try to help everyone around me. And I just have to have a little bit of faith.
I honestly feel a lot better after talking to you guys, but Martise, I would still like you to give us a little encouragement before we hang up.
So I just wanted to stop real quick and just kind of think about it, talk about a few things that I'm thinking about as I listen to this. So yeah, it's Mental Health Month, and today is marks the 2-year mark of George Floyd's murder. And I really think about, as I was, as y'all know, earlier today did an episode on Ricardo Munoz's autopsy, and it just got me thinking, about that all over again. And I started thinking about this all over again. And, having faith in keeping your brothers and sisters and your non-binary friends, your family, everyone around you, your people, making sure that we're all elevating each other's energy and doing enough to encourage one another to not succumb to the ills of racism, and encouraging one another to stand up for one another. I think that that summer, what he did for us, we don't really even begin to fully understand the gifts that we inherited from that almost rebellion. It was almost, because that we got it was quelled, it was quashed, it was squashed, and then you had the insurrection, and that just completely changed everything else. Everyone went to focus on that instead of focusing on the people that actually needed the help and the care and the attention, because it's not on us, and it hasn't been since 2020. That's just something I definitely wanted to speak on, because also, and since the pandemic, and still here we are having mental health crises more and more, and things have gotten really exasperated. Like, people are waiting like almost a year just to seek therapy at this point in time, and there's a shortage of mental health workers on top of it. So these are things that further exasperate communities that are already disproportionately affected by mental health issues because of the things that we go through when it comes to racism.
Black Lives Matter. Black is not the home of the brave if we cannot stand up to our oppressors. My life matters. The life of my people matter. And it's about time that this country, these politicians, these corrupt police officers know that, and they know that we're tired, and we're not going to sit by and allow it to happen anywhere.
Black lives matter. 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 Black lives matter.
For me to be black in America is to me constantly have to question why I fight so hard for a country who does not fight for me. I fight
Talk
for
about
everything I have. I fight for every job. I fight for every opportunity to vote.
Talk about
And
it.
this country does not support them. This country sits by and allows its people to watch each other be murdered in the streets on video without justice. It says to me that they're doing these things in public because they know they can.
Yes.
And they know they're getting away with it.
Yes.
To see my people brutalized in color, in real time,
Yes.
these police protests, and watch my people tear gassed, watch my people hit with rubber bullets, end up in the hospital losing eyes, that is not okay.
No.
The people united together.
We are no longer willing to sit back and be silent against violence and injustice. We have 3 generations here. We all have our own stories of how racism and systematic oppression and injustice has impacted us. And today we're saying no more. Dealing with racism in school, in my professional career, and in my personal life. It sticks with you. It builds a framework that you have to every day and understanding how you're making your choices and how you're living your life.
Yes.
So it's not just something that I deal with in that moment. I wake up every day and I know racism is around me.
Yes.
But today I'm here to say I don't want to be silent in that world anymore. And I want to make everyone aware that racism needs to stop. I think everybody has their role. If it's not here, maybe it's conversations with your family.
Yes.
Maybe it's posting things on social media. Or maybe it's just educating yourself.
What we need is for white folks to come to these spaces, to listen, to learn, and to take the information back to their communities and tear down systems of white supremacy. It's the institution that allows for a police officer to sit comfortably on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and no other officer stepped in to help. You look at the prison industrial complex system. Or if you even look at COVID-19 and this pandemic and how black people are being disproportionately affected because of lack of adequate health care in this country, all across the spectrum. Black Lives Matter is not just about police brutality. It's about the injustices that happen in our communities every day.
Wow.
I'm right here trying to volunteer to help people. You know, it's the corona pandemic, and we be trying to like protect people while they're trying to get us hurt. You know what I mean? Like giving out masks, sanitizers, free food, free snacks, free water as well, keeping them hydrated, keeping them safe. I'm here not just for myself. I'm here like for my children and for my grandchildren. So like tomorrow they can walk the streets free with no target on their backs, no cops pulling them over, and like not being profiled.
A systematic overhaul of how we view race in this country, how we view the justice system in this country, how we review judges, doctors, lawyers, teachers. Everyone needs to change how they conceptualize race in this country, or nothing's ever going to change. And that starts with these protests. That starts with us talking. That starts with us letting you know what is up. And then it is your duty to follow through.
And that brings up a really good point. Have you been doing the work? Have you still been doing the work?
Obviously, after that, this is a 2-year anniversary of George Floyd's death today. And obviously, after that, lots of things changed as far as the NBA, professional sports, things of that nature. Can you just speak a little bit about just the moment has had on you and just some of the lessons that you have learned in the last couple of years after that this killing?
I mean, yeah, that had a great impact on everyone, especially at the time that it happened. And the stance that, you know, a lot of people took in, especially in the NBA. And I think different scenario and situation, but obviously what happened yesterday in Texas was devastating. And obviously a lot of people have been on record last 24 hours, I guess, talking about it and how like it's sad that it's becoming something that we're like getting numb to. and it truly is. What happened yesterday was sickening, and obviously everybody sends their prayers and condolences to the families of those kids. But at some point, that does get tiring of going through the same process, and the same result keeps happening over and over again. And I'm no politician and things like that, but I heard something yesterday that the guy, when he turned 18, first thing he did was bought a handgun and an assault rifle. Just if you don't know anything about laws, that just doesn't sound like something that should be, that you should be able to do. So I am a basketball player. I don't have all the answers, but something does have to change in that regard, because obviously things like this unfortunately continue to happen.
You know what? Basketball player or not, you're a citizen. You're a person with a mind that has things that they have to say.
2020, but the historic George Floyd saga really began the next day at exactly 1:46 a.m.
I cannot breathe.
That was the moment when 17-year-old Darnella Frazier posted the video she shot with her cell phone to her Facebook page. By daybreak, the video was circulating all over social media.
I don't even know what to do or how to handle this at this particular time. I know that this is, I am speechless. I'm really, really speechless.
Gail King was racked with emotion.
It feels to me like an open season, and that it's just not sometimes a safe place to be in this country for Black men. And today is too much for me.
Breaking news tonight.
That night, all 3 evening news broadcasts aired the video for the first time, warning viewers of what they were about to see.
He can be heard on the video saying, "I can't breathe."
We must warn you, the images are disturbing.
People were moved to tears.
There's so much pain. We get so tired. We have Black children.
All of us have this fear that maybe someday that'll be my son, or that'll be my nephew.
Despite the pandemic, massive protests erupted across the USA, and very soon, the world. Peaceful protests for the most part, with pockets of rage and looting. It is estimated as many as 26 million people participated, making them the largest in U.S. history. It was called a racial reckoning.
I was shocked when I literally was just like stunned, because you can't believe you're watching. It's like someone being choked to death in front of you, and you see the life seeping from it. So you're shocked by that.
On ABC, Black correspondents came together to speak about their experiences.
I get pulled over, a cop pulls over for nothing. I'm not speeding, I'm in traffic, I'm nothing, just doing nothing but driving while Black.
With growing racial sensitivity, the long-running show Cops was canceled. So was the popular ride-along show Live PD. HBO Max pulled Gone with the Wind.
Find the defendant guilty.
1 year later, we are still dealing with the shock, which started when a teenager bravely ground and took the video that would change history.
Without that video, George Floyd dies that day. Those police officers don't have a moment of pause. There's no investigation probably, and they're all still in the force, and there's no change.
Today, the NAACP held a virtual moment of silence at 9:29 a.m. to symbolize the 9 minutes and 29 seconds Officer Derek Chauvin held his knee on George Floyd's neck.
So the Leon Block last year went to Minneapolis and filmed a bunch of stuff, but we also I went to George Floyd Memorial, so I just wanted to share some stuff with y'all. The art was pretty cool. I'll go back to that because that's from today. Where is the rest? Oh, I guess it didn't come up yet, but
It's the people's way right here, y'all. Blessings upon blessings. Greetings upon greetings, my beautiful people. Hashtag United We Walk. Hashtag pick them up, put them down. All power to the people, man.
I find it crazy that they opened it up to traffic.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Peace and blessings. Oh, you want to see the painting? Oh, sorry. Give me strength, Lord. Give me strength, Lord. Fully activated. You already know, Erica. If y'all ain't catch that, man, a bunch of our comrades from Grand Rapids, Michigan, got arrested yesterday on bogus warrants. Why another comrade was asking people to come and record what was going on, show some love. As soon as people were pulling up, police was walking up on them, arresting them right on the spot. So they do have, I believe Erica has they have a GoFundMe or something like that in place for the inconvenience and stuff like that, what they had to deal with. So please go look at that as well. Y'all can look at that on Erica's page or Alley Alley. Hey, Grandma.
I'm George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd. I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
My life matters. My life matters. My life matters.
My life
matters.
My life matters.
My life matters.
Justice to me is doing what's right.
When somebody commits a crime,
They get locked up.
It's equal accountability for all.
Justice to me is fixing inequality. And justice to me is equality across the board.
It's ironic that black men are often targeted by white officers.
I'm still facing things that my parents have faced over the years.
I think it's not fair because I think everybody should be equal, and I think that everybody should, go to the same things. Everybody should have the same opportunities.
I've noticed that justice does not have the face of color as much as it used to. I really think the face of justice is green these days, and the lower class suffers on a regular basis.
Justice to me is seeing those who bring our black community down by abusing their power behind bars.
The person who committed a crime, they will have to suffer consequences.
Justice to me is when a black man in general, just a black man in general, walks down the street. I feel like he shouldn't be threatened when he sees a cop or a cop car, or he shouldn't feel like his life is in danger when he sees someone wearing that badge, because the person wearing that badge has or feels like they have more power than they actually do, and they abuse that power.
Why are my people still suffering from things that has happened in the past with my ancestors? And here we are, 2020, and still the same things are happening. We're being beaten, we're being lynched, we're being killed. Why?
I think that
Justice means bringing us all up as one, as Americans.
I am
George Floyd.
I am
George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd. I am
George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd. I won't be able to see my daughter grow old, to be at her prom, to be at her wedding. Justice to me is police reform throughout the whole 50 states, where officers are given random drug tests, random lie detectors, just to see where they're at mentally. This can't happen in 2020. Police brutality must come to an end.
Watching that video with all those black men just definitely hit a chord. The last few videos really kind of hit a chord, to be honest, and just puts you back in that time, you know. I took part in a lot, and I will definitely say personally that, like I said before, George Floyd gave a gift to the world, and he gave us the opportunity to wake up, and we can't let that pass us by. It's already been 2 years. So I'm just wondering, who still remembers that feeling? The feeling that, if you watch the clip with Gayle King, how she felt on the air.
And put on the clock. God, what is it, 9 minutes and 46 seconds? 9 minutes and 46 seconds. Yeah, let's this smoke ain't good. This is that smoke. This ain't that smoke, so don't. They gonna get you late. Put your ass back in there.
Yeah, so that was obviously a clip from Minneapolis. I was trying to find the clips, and I guess they're all here. So that was just clips from, yeah. Here we go.
So we're reflecting on his life and legacy. George Floyd was a mentor and an advocate for ending the pattern of violence among young men. He was also into sports, playing both football and basketball, and continued his sports career into college at South Florida State College and Texas A&M University. George touched the lives of the people who knew him well and those who only knew him in passing. Patrons at his restaurant job said that he was a gentle giant who loved his hugs from his regulars, and a former teammate of George said that the team used to call him Big Friendly. George Floyd's murder by police sparked international outrage and the largest racial justice protest in the United States since the Civil Rights Movement. Black Lives Matter protests also happened in other countries around the world in the summer of 2020. Activists have called for changes from banning police chokeholds to an entire overhaul of the policing system. Many states have made adjustments to their policing regulations following these events and protests. We send love to all those affected by George Floyd's tragic passing.
So we went through the rest of these clips here, but I just wanted to kind of send a reminder to everyone. And, this is with everything else going on, I think a lot of people missed it, but if you go out there, there's a lot of stuff. A lot of people celebrating and doing things. There is more footage that I do have. I just got to get it together. So I will be live again in memorial of George Floyd. And so I just want everyone to sit and reflect on the different discussions and clips that was presented tonight. And if you didn't get a chance to check, definitely rewind back and check out the other clips. It definitely gives me some things to think about again, as in reference to just specifically speaking to Black lives, Black men especially, but Black lives and policing, and all of the arguments that we had and that we were striving toward, dismantling police unions, and trying to take on big entities like the FOP and things like that. All of those movements have lost momentum. Why have they lost momentum? Why haven't we not kept up on our promises? We need to up the ante, not let people co-opt us. And it happens every time. So I just want to remind people of what sparked a movement and what we need to continue to fight for. Please go ahead and share this stream, like and support. You can donate to the Venmo and Cash App at the bottom of the screen. You can hit us up at theleonblock@gmail.com. Text us at 484-909-0873. We love to hear from you. And we also love to hear from you right here in the comments. You can just comment how you feel. We asked a few questions actually about where you are in things and how you feel about George Floyd. Now, again, we did talk about the fact that it is Mental Health Month, and keep in mind that the intersections of Black men mental health, policing, police brutality, there's a common denominator, and these things intersect. And it's just interesting because I didn't think about it being Mental Health Month until that one clip that we shared. I just want all y'all to remember to be safe. And it's interesting that it's something that we started saying in 2020, as a goodbye instead of saying bye. You notice how we all say be safe? Again, I will say that George Floyd woke us up, but let's continue to stay awake. Make sure you meditate on your path, celebrate your being, liberate your spirit, and educate yourself. Have a good one, y'all.